The Denver Nuggets get the win over the Warriors. Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. take the lead as Jokic struggles from the field, but Steve Kerr cries foul because Joker got to the line 18 times. We'll talk about fouls and grifting and all that type of stuff, but more importantly, a Nuggets win here on Locked On Nuggets.
You are Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast, part of the Locked On Network, your team every day. Thanks for joining us and making us part of your day. Appreciate you guys being with us and joining us and being an everydayer and making us part of your lives on the daily. We do appreciate you guys being with us on whatever platform you've chosen. You can catch us on Apple Podcasts, where we do appreciate those 5-star reviews, Spotify, or on YouTube. Best way to support the show. Go to youtube.com/LockedOnNuggets, and you can join the show and join folks like, man, it's Christmas Day at midnight, and I still got folks hanging out with me like Zamora and Senny, and JS Banger says, yo, what are us sickos doing here? Robert Darte's hanging out with us. Dr. Van de Strand, and of course, Five-ish is here with us. He was first, as always. Thanks for joining us and being a part of our community. On today's show, we'll talk about the Nuggets win over the Warriors, about Jamal Murray. We'll talk about the strength of Nuggets basketball and how even in a game where Nikola Jokic doesn't necessarily dominate, they're still able to get a win over a good opponent in an important spot, thanks to how the Nuggets play basketball. Plus, we'll also get into, yes, all of the stuff with the fouls. We'll talk it all out here on Locked On Nuggets. Want to let you know, though, that today's show is coming to you late on Monday evening. There will be another show from me solo on Tuesday in the afternoon. I don't know what time yet. Probably between 2 and 3. After DNVR goes live, I'll hop on here and we'll do a show tomorrow afternoon. And then Adam and I will be on Wednesday morning in our usual time for World's Finest. And then I'm gone until the following Wednesday, as I'm heading to Disney World for a few days with the fam. Okay, let's get into it. Nuggets get the win over the Golden State Warriors, 120-114. Jamal Murray leads the way for the Nuggets with 28 points. It was interesting because, like, it didn't necessarily feel like Jamal was making a lot of shots. Like, he was taking a bunch of contested stuff and he was creating separation, but missing them. And then I looked up and I'm like, Jamal's leading the team in points. How did he get to 23? You know, it was just amazing. They kind of got there, and a lot of it was that he was missing the mid-range stuff, but he was able to hit 3 of 5 from three-point range. And then the fourth quarter, he just took over and closed this game out, and it was absolutely phenomenal. How about Michael Porter Jr. with 19 points and 10 boards? An incredible, unbelievable block on Klay Thompson, and just a really good job. I asked him after the game to kind of take us through that possession. He was like, we knew that they wanted to generate threes because they were behind, so we knew they were looking at 3. So I knew I could close out. And I knew that he would probably try and shoot it. So I just tried to bother him and make it hard for him. And I was able to get the block. It was an unbelievable play by MPJ. Glad he got to close this game and glad that he was able to make that play. He was terrific in this game. Got off to another really hot start. I tried asking MPJ after the game about, like, hey, what's like the key to these really good starts that you're on? Trying to make it into a positive. And he sussed it out and was like, yeah, I don't know why I'm not, why it's not continuing. I guess they're kind of changing up coverage, but I think I just missed some looks later in the game. And it's like, I don't think it's a bad thing. I think that a lot of it is these teams come out with a game plan. Let's try and contain the two-man game with Nikola Jokic, and then that leaves MPJ open, and they make the read, and he punishes them. And then teams are like, man, we can't let MPJ go for 40. We gotta start closing out and stay more home on him. And guess what? That means that the underneath stuff to AG and the two-man game and KCP and cuts to the bench guys, that all opens up. So to me, like, there is kind of a thing to this. I thought MPJ played absolutely phenomenal though today. I thought he was honestly, the second best, if not the best Nugget, even with 19 points. Nikola Jokic gets 26, cuts 26 points, 14 rebounds, 8 assists, as Joker tends to do, plus 21. Mike was a plus 23 in this one, by the way. He was only 4 of 12 from the field, Joker was, because he went 18 of 18 from the line. I do want to say the Joker going 18 of 18 from the stripe really matters here. And I don't want to get into this trap of holding him to such a high standard that I act like today was a bad game. It wasn't a bad game. I don't think he played badly. I actually think that Nikola played a terrific game defensively in this game, because Steph Curry, if you noticed, was held to 7 of 21 shooting for just 18 points. 18 points on 21 shots for Steph. How often does that happen? Just 4 dimes to 3 turnovers. Steph was 3 of 13 from 3. So, he was 4 of 8 from inside 3-point range. But honestly, they did a really good job containing Steph. And a lot of that was Nikola. Like KCP rightfully got the most credit after the game for how he navigates screens. And he does. He does a phenomenal job. But the Nuggets were really good in both their switches and re-switches on various sequences to make sure that Curry couldn't get Jokic in ISOs. And Jokic was crowding Curry really effectively in pick and rolls. Whenever they tried to get Curry involved in pick and roll action, they were crowding him effectively. And that's what you want to do. You want to try and take space away from Steph and make him make a ball reversal pass to the corner. That's not an easy pass for him at his size, facing like a real wall of defense. And they did a really good job of crowding him at multiple levels while KCP chased him around screens. It was a terrific defensive effort. This wasn't just like Steph missed threes. Did Steph miss some threes? Yes. You know why? Because he's the best shooter of all time. And when he misses, you have to assume he's going to make them next time. But the Nuggets did the work. Maybe he doesn't miss those. When he hit one that was after a whistle and he was mad about it because it was a defensive 3 seconds, I was like, uh-oh, he saw one go in. So now he's going to, nope. The Nuggets just kept going at him. They really wore him out. And that was a really phenomenal performance by Nikola defensively. Now, offensively, like I have a lot of things to kind of nitpick. Most especially, I will just go ahead and say this, is like Nikola's now in the 40th percentile at the rim. And that's a little concerning. We'll talk about that a little bit more tomorrow. But it's something that we're going to have to discuss in terms of the efficiency because Jokic has been so good to start the season and plays at such a high level. But we do get to nitpick because he is the best player. We get to talk about it not from he needs to do better, but from what does this mean for the Nuggets if? And that's what we'll talk about a little bit more tomorrow. Elsewhere in this game, look, the bench was a disaster. Just a disaster in this game. The Warriors bench is phenomenal. And they had to move 2 of their guys, their starters to the bench just to try and like stabilize things. Jonathan Kuminga, who moved in the starting unit, minus 24. Kevon Looney gave them great minutes, I thought, in the second half, but he was a minus 9 in this one. But like Chris Paul was a plus 13. Andrew Wiggins was plus 18 and just cooked for a while, especially versus Jamal in post-ups. Good defense from Jamal, just tough stuff from Andrew. And Saric was phenomenal versus the bench unit. The bench was miserable in this game. Reggie Jackson got a little bit banged up. I would not be surprised if Reggie misses the next game. He was really limping. Now he came back and tough through it, which is a credit to him, but it was rough. Nothing especially good from Peyton Watson today. Nothing especially good from Christian Brown, including a really bad air ball. And some bad decision-making. Minus 22 for Christian. It's been rough. The bench was so bad, especially with Zeke Naji. Zeke played 5 minutes. DJ didn't play. They went to Aaron Gordon in the second half in the non-Jokic minutes, and even that really didn't work out great. But the Nuggets were able to salt this one away late, but with great play from the starters. They made enough plays to win. They played great defense, and even without Draymond, this is a really good win, and it now makes them 2-0 versus the Warriors. That's a really good thing for them to be at. I don't know how good Golden State is this year. I just don't. I have a lot of questions. I have a thing up on Action talking about the fact that Steph Curry Steph now has 15 games where he's been a minus. They've lost his minutes. That's not about Steph. He's still shooting 42% from 3 on 11.5 attempts per game, which is nuts. They can't win those. If they're going to be minus 26 in Steph's minutes, they got a shot, man. But they might get it together sooner or later, and you still want that separation. This was a tiebreaker game, and so the Nuggets got a big one. Another one at home, second win in a row on Christmas. Really good game for them. I thought this was a really good performance from this, especially from the team perspective, which we'll talk about a little bit more in the third segment. Up next, though, Steve Kerr had some comments after the game. We'll talk about whether he was right, whether he was wrong, what it means, how did Jokic get 18 free throws. We'll talk about all that on the other side here on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us and making this part of your day. Appreciate you guys being with us on a Tuesday. Recording this late Monday night. So let's talk about fouls. All right. Joker shot 18 free throws in this game. Swipe was telling me that in the Charlotte game, he didn't shoot one until like midway through the second or third quarter. And then he gets 18 in this one. Steve Kerr after the game was not a happy camper. He was not a happy man. He says, quote, he was going nuts during the game. Says, quote, I have a problem with the way we are legislating defense out of the game. We're just enabling players to BS their way through the foul line. If I were a fan, I wouldn't have wanted to watch the second half. It was disgusting. Okay. Second half was pretty entertaining. So I think Steve's going a little bit far on that. First, Steve was upset about losing a game on the road in a game where the opponent shot 18 free throws. Like, news at 11. Opposing coach doesn't think players should have gotten as many foul calls, right? So don't freak out so much over that. The mentions are pretty hot over on old social media about this issue. Here's what I'll tell you. Those of us that have covered the team a long time, that have covered the entirety of Nikola Jokic's run, said after the game, this is not my words, this is the words of my colleagues, okay? That is the most grifting I have ever seen Nikola Jokic do. And there was one person that was like, I didn't really like it. That was not fun. That was not good to watch. Jokic has been so frustrated with the officiating, obviously with the ejections. And today he sold it. The distinction here is that I asked Jamal after the game if star players have to do that because of the amount of physicality, how physical they are played in particular. And Jamal said something interesting because Jamal said there's a line. He said there's an exaggerating contact and there's flopping. And I kind of disagree with him on this because I think you can flop after a legit foul. But this is the thing. I'm going to validate you right now. Okay. There have been times when I've pushed back on Nuggets fans that want to criticize the officials when they lose. And if I did that, it was because I'd be like, you still got to win this game. Like, I've always said, like, you still got to win this game. Jokic gets a bad whistle. He averages 6 free throws a game. That's undeniable. I have said this for years. I've said this. I was like, how is it that the most dominant post-up player in the league, who plays in the paint with the most touches per game of any player in the league, shoots this few free throws compared to his contemporaries? How does he shoot fewer free throws than James Harden? How does he shoot fewer free throws than Paul George? How does he shoot fewer free throws than Joel Embiid? How does he shoot fewer free throws than all of these guys? How is that possible? Not that he shoots fewer, but he shoots that many fewer. Jokic gets a bad whistle. The cuts on his arm, all of it. He gets beat up. Absolutely. The Warriors were fouling today. Like, Swipa is whenever he's on the show, like if he's on tomorrow or whatever, he's going to tell you that. He's going to be like, they were fouling. He's not wrong. They were fouling. Like, there were sequences where they were fouling. Joker sold today more than I've ever seen him sell. And today was one of the only times I can remember Joker deliberately entering into sequences with the expressed intent of drawing a foul, not of trying to make a basketball play. And if he gets fouled exaggerating it, he's done that tons. But actually being like, I'm going to initiate the sequence and then flail, and I'm going to get the call. If you are a Nuggets partisan, especially if you're a Jokic partisan, you look at how Luka Doncic is officiated, or Joel Embiid, or Zion Williamson, or Anthony Davis, and you're like, why not my guy? Why not my guy? But there was something honestly really, and maybe he this is a blip and he doesn't do this again. But I would not blame Nikola Jokic for adapting to this. I said this on Twitter and I mean it. There's basketball and there's NBA basketball, and Europeans will tell you they are not the same. Players that have played in multiple leagues will tell you those two things are not the same thing. And a lot of it has to do with how they're officiated. And so Jokic embracing this and like going into this, I don't blame him. It's going to save his body. He's tired of getting hit. He wants the free throws. He wants there to be consequences for fouling him. And he did today. It's a bummer, I think, because there was, I think, a certain level of pride that you could take as a Nuggets fan that Joker never really engaged in that stuff. Like, Luka has a lot of games like this where he's just like very deliberately like, I'm just going to generate free throws all night long. Embiid, it's every game. Like, that's just part of Joel's game. And he's unstoppable. And if you don't foul him, he's going to score. That's a part of this too. But the same is kind of true of Nikola. And so Nikola's opting to go the other route here. Miter says because he doesn't look bothered and he gets fouled. It's true. Like Jokic usually just kind of like he will complain about no calls, obviously, but it's kind of a situation. Big Honey says Jokic gets 18 free throw attempts and now the world's on fire. Funny how Jokic is getting his criticism while other stars are normalizing and allowed to do it. I want to push back on this real quick, guys. Okay. It is not like Adam tweeted, he's like, this is going to become a talking point. And I get it. I get it. There has been criticism of Joel Embiid for how he plays in the foul grifting. There was so much criticism of James Harden when he was doing this. Like, it's not like this has never been a talking point and now Joker does this and now everyone's talking about it. Joker is not going to be the face of it because anybody is going to be like, how many free throws does he have? He only averages 6 free throws a game. But they will. Kerr's point's not wrong. Kerr's point's right. The problem was that Kerr chose to do it on a day versus a guy who literally did this for like the first time I've ever seen him do it. But he did it. Like Joker, this is the first time I've seen Joker do this. I've never seen him exaggerate this much contact before. I've never seen him go out of his way to do this. And that I think is like a little bit difficult. Danny says, where's pride going to get you? The Nuggets offense is stalling this year trying to play the right way. That's not true, Danny. Like, they're an elite offense. That's absolutely not true. They won the NBA title. Denver has the number 5 offensive rating in the league with Jamal Murray having missed a month of play. The offense doesn't stall. It doesn't happen. You don't need to do this. That's not accurate. Hurricane says, I recall the Harden criticism being drowned out by talking heads saying these are fouls. That's not true. Harden is like the most disliked NBA, like 2-time MVP, or I'm sorry, former MVP, 1-time MVP that we've ever seen. And like, it's fair. I always said this, Harden asks for it. He does foul bait. He absolutely does. He asks for it. But like, you can't just reorganize reality to suggest that like Jokic is the first one getting criticized. That's not true. And when they do this week, they are going to talk about Joel Embiid and they will talk about all these free throws. I think a lot of it is that some of the physicality that Jokic has dealt with has really worn on him. But part of this also is just like you get tired of it day after. Like I think about this a lot. That winning and losing doesn't matter as much to you in year 8 as it did in year 2. And you get tired of getting fouled every single game, especially when you're not getting calls. And so you exaggerate it. But I think it's a shame to me that the NBA, honestly, here's my big take. It's a shame the NBA rewarded these other guys. So Joker adopted this strategy, even if it's just for a day. It's a shame that Luka gets rewarded the way that he does. It's a shame that Trae Young gets rewarded the way that he does. It's a shame that James Harden gets rewarded the way that he does. It's a shame that Joel Embiid and Anthony Davis both get rewarded for falling down. These are the biggest athletes on the floor, and they get rewarded for hitting the deck on purpose. That's a failure of NBA officiating. It's a failure. I hope that Jokic doesn't embrace this, as tempting as I'm sure it may be, because he's got to be looking at it being like, wow, did this and didn't shoot well and still got 26, like finally I got my calls. But I just don't think that this is like, I do feel like there are ways in which this is not the right way to play basketball. Danny talked about like the offense stalling. I'll go the other way. I think when you're doing the foul baiting, it does the opposite. I think it grinds the game down. The ball doesn't find energy because all you're doing is like constantly pursuing these attacks of trying to get the other guys get these fouls. And you wind up being like, once you get a couple of them, now you're trying to do it every time. And if the calls don't come, it goes the other way for scores. Like just you should just play basketball. Jamal said after the game, Jamal's like, I don't really do this. And then Jamal was like, maybe I should do this. Maybe I get more free throws. He was also like, but everybody thinks they get fouled more. And that's pretty common. I'll say this, that when I went back and I watched, I did this with Kobe and I did this with LeBron and I did this with, I've done this with Steph too. I actually went back and like, if you watch their possessions and this is one of the things that is really, important in doing the work of analyzing the game. If you go back and you just watch their possessions, and you do this with the same is definitely true with Jokic, which is why I know that he gets a bad whistle. You would not believe how much contact these guys get. Like LeBron gets a bad whistle. I'm not kidding, guys. LeBron legitimately, well, until he got to the Lakers. Until he got to the Lakers, like LeBron legitimately got a bad whistle in Cleveland and Miami because he was so physical and so fast that they could not accommodate for it because he was also able to get around contact. Giannis gets a good one because Giannis can't get out of the way, and so there's going to be a collision. But you would be surprised how much Steph gets held and how much Kobe got grabbed and like all these things. Like it's pretty common. So I don't mind the frustration. But I do think that Kerr's right, but that ultimately I have, and look, if I'm wrong and this is on First Take and everyone's like, it's Jokic, a grip, blah, 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 then we'll light it up and we'll talk about how ridiculous it is. And I'm not going to say that's not going to happen because I've seen stupid stuff, the MVP conversation in general last year, right? But I do think that you got to manage the fact that like we have to accept like Joker did do this. Joker did absolutely exaggerate legitimate contact to draw free throws, and it worked, and it got you all what you wanted, which is Joker got to the line. So you got the win. I guess you can be happy about that. On the other side, I want to talk about the strength of Nuggets basketball and why the Nuggets are a little bit different than a lot of other teams, including the Warriors. We'll talk about that on the other side here on Locked On Nuggets. Final segment here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us, making this party today. Appreciate you guys being with us on a Tuesday. I'll be with you later on Tuesday afternoon, and then I'll be with Adam on Wednesday morning for World's Finest, previewing the Nuggets as they trek on with the season. It's weird. We have these touch points like IST and all these, like the first part of the season and all these different things, and then like the games just keep going. So I keep thinking about with the Suns after they got just sunned by Luka Doncic with 50 points on Monday night, is that like, yeah, the Suns are in disarray and everything is terrible. They have another game in 48 hours and everything can turn around. So I mentioned Curry's plus minus the other night to start the show. And like Curry's an all-timer. He is, in my opinion, top 10 player of all time, if not top 5. I don't know how the best shooter at the thing that is most important in basketball, which is putting the little round thing into the hole with the net attached. How that doesn't make you one of the greatest of all time. It should. That said, there is an element with the Nuggets this year where there have been games that Nikola just absolutely dominates and controls from start to finish. There's been a lot of those games. There's been games where he takes over in the third or fourth quarter and just absolutely goes nuts, and it's pass, shot, pass, shot, pass, and Joker just destroys. But there is also, I think, a stronger collective than there was last year. And even though the non-Jokic minutes are bad and they lose them, one of the strengths, I think, is that how good the Nuggets are with the starters, with Nikola there, no matter what Nikola does. Like, they make plays. Jamal makes plays. MPJ is making plays. Aaron Gordon and KCP are making plays. And when Nikola is out there, you see guys like Peyton Watson and Christian Brown making plays too. That doesn't mean that Nikola is not responsible for these things, because ultimately they don't do them when he's not on the court, and that's meaningful. But I think that there is something serious to be taken about the strength of the Nuggets brand of basketball, because even teams like the Celtics, I think, still have questions about, can they execute? Can they find themselves? What is Celtics basketball? I think the Sixers still are trying to figure out what is Sixers basketball. The Lakers are still trying to figure out what is Lakers basketball. The Wolves know. The Wolves know what Wolves basketball is. It's defend like nuts. And Ant does a bunch of stuff, and the Wolves try and, contribute. Like, that's their model. Like, that's their formula. That's their identity. The Thunder, I think, know who they are. They're 5 out, Shea attacks, hyper athleticism. The Warriors don't honestly have much of an identity right now, which is crazy considering, how they've always had one, but they're still trying to figure that, like, that's one of their biggest problems. That's why one of the reasons why I think so much criticism is coming on Kerr is the identity that he has always had for them. They don't have this year. And the Nuggets have a really strong identity. and they know how they need to play. And they know how to empower one another, how to enable one another, how to strengthen one another, and how to make the entire collective better. CJ says, so Matt's on the Malone Coach of the Year campaign. Let's go. It's going to be Dagnall or Finch. Just heads up. Whichever one of those is going to win. But look, Michael Malone's never going to win Coach of the Year. And honestly, those guys wind up getting fired. So maybe it's for the best for him. It's not necessarily, this is what's really tough, because I don't want to deny Jokic the credit that's rightfully his. And he had 26 today. But like I said, like, I didn't feel like Jokic was necessarily present today. Malone kind of talked about how, like, we fed him and he stayed aggressive, and that's how he got those fouls. And I kind of agree. Adam talked about how he drew a lot of off-ball fouls, and that got him in the bonus. That's also true. I agree with that as well. So, like, again, Joker does a lot. Like, Joker was just as instrumental in this win as anybody. 14 boards, 8 assists, right? But I do think that there is a collective identity when this team locks in and it goes, that does speak to how they all play together. And it's not necessarily as much Jokic save us. This is the lowest I have seen them on Jokic please save us possessions in several years. There are still going to be times in the playoffs and versus tough opponents when it will be Jokic please save us. That's why they have the MVP. That's why they pay him the max money. That's why he is considered to be the best player in the league coming into the season. That's why he is a top 3 in MVP consideration, because he's that important. But there is something about the way the Nuggets play basketball. What's interesting, though, I think is the question of, like, why is that not present when Jokic is not on the floor? And I think a lot of that comes to that they're all still trying to do those things, but they can't leverage it in the same way. Malone had, like, this is an old adage in basketball, but I thought it was really great. Still, I've heard it before, but I thought it was great today. Malone said, if you really want to simplify the game of basketball, the best defensive players know how to take space away, and the best offensive players know how to create it. And Jokic knows how to create space in all aspects. But I will say that the Nuggets are learning more and more, I think, how to navigate individually to create space on their own. Like, you do see more sequences where guys are just having the confidence to make their own plays. MPJ in particular today, I thought was like, he was aggressively finding ways when he had the ball to get space for him to score. Even if it's on dunks or cuts or open threes, whatever, like, he's creating space. Gordon, I think, that's the biggest difference in Gordon's game from here versus Orlando. Jamal, with his footwork and moves, is able to create space. And Jamal's upgraded passing helps with this. And KCP's upgraded, like, there were sequences, KCP had a lob to Aaron Gordon underneath. That was a really smart play. And it's one of the things I thought about today as they were scoring, was that how many of I watch all these games and I'll see teams like with a guy underneath and he gets it and he tries for the floater. And you'll make that a high percentage of the time. It's a short shot at the rim. So you're going to make it like 54% of the time. But if you lob it and you have reliable lob options, you're now turning a 54% conversion rate into an 80 to 90% conversion rate. And that's just going to make a difference over the course of 1,000 million, however many possessions you got in the season, 8,200 possessions roughly. It's going to make a big difference. So there's something about the way that this team does play that I think is really impressive. Around Nikola. Nikola is still vital, and without him, they are still terrible. Last thing on that, I do kind of think that Jamal Murray needs to play more of a pure point with the second unit. He keeps trying to do like the ISO stuff because they don't have a pick and roll weapon. They got no one to really work with him. Like, he doesn't have a center that he can play. He can't play pick and roll with Zeke. He can't play pick and roll with Aaron. He can't really play pick and roll with DJ. He doesn't have anybody he's comfortable playing pick and roll with, and they've never had one except for Mason early in his career. But, like, if that's going to be the case, I do think that Jamal can ISO and then create stuff and then kick. I don't think that, like, ISO scoring Jamal is the best answer for the Nuggets offense in those minutes. I think more of him acting as a pure point, which he's much closer to than I ever thought he would be, is actually a pretty good approach. All right, let's go wrap it up for Locked On Nuggets on Christmas. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Appreciate you guys being with us. Let us know what you think in the comments, as well as on Twitter at Locked On Nuggets. Appreciate you guys being with us. I'll be back with you tomorrow afternoon. I'll see if I can drag Swipe It in for one as well. Have yourselves a great day. Enjoy your Tuesday. We're off and running, and we're heading towards a new year. And happy 2024. So we'll be back tomorrow with more here on Locked On Nuggets.